Okay, so let's fast forward now to kind of where we're at now. You obviously are successful, like from the outside looking in, but of course everyone has their own definition of that. Yeah. Do you feel that way about yourself? Like, what was the point where you said, I'm going to start teaching and helping other people do this? I imagine it takes a bit of like, I've kind of nailed this, I could teach it now.
Yeah.
To want to do that.
That's actually so funny because I, for the longest time, had the biggest imposter syndrome. And maybe it was because I came from a sport that I had dedicated like so many years to that, and I was like so disciplined and so focused on just that one thing. And I definitely carried that over to my real estate portfolio, but maybe like I identified as this equestrian athlete and I was so proud of all my accomplishments. And going into real estate, I just felt like this fumbling little kid that was just like trying to figure it out like step by step. And I think especially because like real estate is, I feel like quite dominated by older people that have like been in it, again, 10, 15 years, they've got that proof of concept, they've got all this experience. And I'm just this, 27, 28 with an energy just like, I'm going to figure it out. Yeah. And so, no, like I keep sometimes like asking myself, like, when have I made it? Like, am I happy with where I am? And then I think it was only about a year ago that I finally just said, you have to just be okay with the journey. Like, it's not always about how many properties you own or how much net assets you have under management or how many partners you have, like I think I did get kind of sucked into the idea of maybe comparing myself to others a little bit. So,
well, and you start hanging out with groups of other investors now and everyone's like, well, I got 10 properties, I got this, right? You probably start thinking like, oh shit, I only have little measly ones.
That's right. Yeah. So it definitely took me a very long time before I truly felt like accomplished and proud, even though it probably should have been years ago. Because I started my portfolio from absolutely nothing, using other people's money with not a lot of like, practical skill sets besides that discipline and drive that I had from, my athletic career. And in terms of coaching, like, it was really interesting because it was a girlfriend of mine that actually encouraged me to do it. So, she had started a coaching program and I was so just in admiration of her. And, she was another millennial woman coaching in the real estate space. There wasn't a lot of that like 5-6 years ago. And I really admired her. And she said, well, why don't you start to host some webinars? And I had been investing full time for about a year and a half. And I said, like, no, like, I don't have that much experience. I only have so many doors and that. And she said, but look at what you've done from scratch. Like, you've been raising capital. And I was very proficient on social media in particular, which is, in my opinion, kind of like a newer medium that a lot of the old guys in real estate weren't really utilizing. They were still doing handwritten like letters and old school stuff.
So there was an opportunity there that your youth actually was working in your favor.
My favor.
Yeah, and you were probably already using social media for yourself, like personally.
I knew how to use Facebook and Instagram.
So you use your millennialness, if that's a word, to help you. Imposter syndrome, this comes up in a lot of my conversations. It comes up a lot with women, and I don't know if women are just more inclined to talk about it. So maybe if I have some male guests on, I can learn more from them. But until that happens, I have you to talk about more your experience with it. I feel personally, because I never really heard of the term imposter syndrome until about a year and a half ago. And then as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, I have that. Like, I have that every single day. I'm at work trying to, helping people buy real estate. Some of them, a lot of them are men in their 50s who are explaining life to me, through their own lens, of course. And they're obviously educated, experienced. They're talking to me about the last time a recession hit, which I was like, I don't even remember that. Yeah. So there's a lot of moments where I feel I shouldn't be in this room. If someone asks me a question, I'm going to get outed. Like, it reminds me of being in school, like the teacher's like, hey, Laura, you're doing the next question on the board. And you're like, I didn't do my homework, which is why I always did my homework, because I was like, never out me. I don't want to get outed. Yeah. Do you think it ever truly goes away, or you just put yourself in other situations and now you're an imposter in that new situation?
Truly, like, given my real estate trajectory going from student rentals to now doing, like, we just did like a 90 unit like apartment building, you would think, people probably looking outside would be like, wow, like, this girl's got it.
Yeah, that sounds complicated.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a huge shift in a short period of time. And I still am like, inside sometimes, like, am I really worthy of this? Like, am I capable of doing this? Have I actually made it? And so I don't think it actually ever truly goes away, but I do think that the more you believe in yourself, like the more you take risks for yourself and the more you prove to yourself that you can overcome adversity over time, even if you still feel like an imposter, you at least can tell yourself like, but I can do better. Like I can overcome.
Yeah, you kind of have experiences to go back on to say, well, I did that. And I say this a lot to women, particularly who want to be on camera and they can't get over the fear of being on camera. And it saddens my heart because I just know that if they try and they put in the reps, they'll get it. And it reminds me of like a kid on a diving board, right? Yeah. Like and a lot of women who have kids know this because they're trying to teach their kid to swim. They're like, just jump. And they're like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And the kid is terrified and they're like this far off the water, like nothing bad's going to happen. But they're so scared. And then they do it. When they finally get the courage and do it, and then their head comes up out of the water, they're like, oh my God, did you see that? Yeah. Right? Versus sometimes there's unfortunately the kid that backs off the diving board and won't do it. And you think as probably a parent or someone watching, you're like, oh my God, if you just did it, like, But for some reason, as we get older, it's like we lose that sense of curiosity of what we're capable of. I wonder, right? Like as a kid, it's like, am I capable? Can I do it? And we do that throughout life. That's why we sit and like practice shooting basketball outside because we're like, can I beat my older brother and his friends at basketball? At least for me, like I would just practice out of I wonder. And it, anyone who's watching or listening to this, I just hope that like, it's like, take that step, like just see, like say, am I capable of this thing that I think I'm not, or that people think I'm not, or that I think people think I'm not? Most of the time, a lot of those things are just voices in our heads. People are cheering you on, right? Rarely are people like, what you probably found out, no one was like, oh, you shouldn't be here. You only have 3 doors, right? You thought people were thinking that, but did anyone actually ever say that?
Nobody ever thought that. And surprisingly, I know a lot of people get like nervous about social media too. And they're like, oh, like your DMs must be terrible. And I'm like, no, like my DM section looks like a cheering squad, particularly women, thank you so much for your inspirational message. Like, thank you so much for like what you share with the community. And it's so cool because it's like, I remember when I was too scared. When I was starting my YouTube channel, I used to sweat buckets. I had like a script and I was so terrified. Like I was like, don't put me on camera, don't do it. And I think back and it's like, can you imagine if I had never done that? And like now all these people that are like, hey, like you've changed my life by like the stories that you share and like the motivation you give to the community, like that's such a waste. And like you said, there's probably so many women out there with so many beautiful like messages and like stories to share that aren't being heard by the
we always have this thing where we're saying like go find a negative message and then like do a video comment back or like not a mean video comment back, like thanks so much for this feedback, like address it. And then people say, well, Laura, go find me one. And sometimes it is hard to find them. Like I do think the majority of people, because it's not like you and I are like celebrities where people are just trolling us. Yeah, like it's most of the people who are following me are in my community and they want to see me win. And I think it's surprising that women sometimes think women aren't very supportive. I actually think for the most part, women are very supportive. There's always a couple bad apples, of course, but like I just think it's such an interesting community. And once we tap into like the power of ourselves, now I'm getting a little bit like, no, foo-foo, but we're capable of a lot.